Hey, this is Dave DeCamp from antiwar.com. This is anti-war news for Thursday, March 13th, 2025. All right, first thing, another reminder that we started our fundraiser this week. And if you appreciate this show, if you like antiwar.com and you have the means, please consider making a donation. Go to antiwar.com/donate to see the different ways you can help us out. We're trying to reach $100,000 this year. We take crypto. You could donate with PayPal, credit card. There's other ways. Go to antiwar.com/donate to see how you can help out. Again, if you have the means, we really, really appreciate it. We are entirely funded by our readers. All right, so the first story at the top of antiwar.com today, Russia waits for details on the 30-day ceasefire. So the Kremlin said on Wednesday that Russia was waiting for the details of the talks between the U.S. and Ukraine that were held in Saudi Arabia a day earlier before responding to the proposed 30-day ceasefire. This is Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov. He said, quote, "Yesterday, both Secretary of State Marco Rubio and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz mentioned that they would provide us with detailed information about the essence of the conversation that took place in Jeddah through various channels. We need to receive this information first," end quote. He also said that Russia is examining the statements that were made by the U.S. and Ukraine, examining the joint statement that was put out after these talks. In that joint statement, the U.S. and Ukraine said that Ukraine had, quote, "expressed readiness to accept the U.S. proposal to enact an immediate interim 30-day ceasefire, which can be extended by mutual agreement of the parties and which is subject to acceptance and concurrent implementation by the Russian Federation," end quote. Russia has previously expressed opposition to the idea of a temporary ceasefire with Ukraine, and Russian sources told Reuters that it would be hard for Russian President Vladimir Putin to accept the ceasefire without any real guarantees since he has the advantage on the battlefield. The U.S. also resumed weapon shipments and intelligence sharing with Ukraine, which had been briefly paused. Russia might view the 30-day ceasefire as an opportunity for Ukraine to stabilize its defensive lines and rearm. The U.S. and Russia are expected to hold talks on the details of the proposal this week, and the Kremlin said that a phone call between Trump and Putin is possible. There's some reports saying it could happen on Friday. One thing that happened on Wednesday, CIA Director John Ratcliffe spoke with Sergei Naryshkin, the head of Russia's SVR, Foreign Intelligence Service. It's unclear if they really discussed the ceasefire proposal or anything like that. But the SVR said that the officials agreed on maintaining regular contact with the aim of facilitating stability and reducing confrontation between the U.S. and Russia. So I think the contacts that the U.S. and Russia are having are good. I always think it's good when the two biggest nuclear powers are talking to each other. But this skeptical of this ceasefire proposal. And the next story, Zelensky says that he will not agree to territorial concessions. So this one is from Kyle Anzalone at the Libertarian Institute. So President Volodymyr Zelensky explained his understanding of the ceasefire proposed by Ukrainian and American officials this week, saying his country would not make any territorial concessions. Additionally, Kiev expects strong steps from President Donald Trump should Moscow reject the plan. Discussing the ceasefire proposal on Wednesday, Zelensky said, quote, "We are fighting for our independence. Therefore, we will not recognize any occupied territories as Russia's. Our people have fought for this. Our heroes died. How many injured? How many passed? No one will forget about it. This is the most important red line. We will not let anyone forget about this crime against Ukraine." So Zelensky's, end quote. So Zelensky's refusal to give up territory makes it unlikely that Russia would agree to the ceasefire. I mean, again, it depends what the U.S. says to Russia behind the scenes. But with Zelensky saying things like this, it's not looking great. And Marco Rubio's rhetoric has been concerning as well. He's saying, oh, if Russia rejects this, then we know what the impediment to peace is, making it sound like then the U.S. is just going to go on supporting this proxy war and the fight, and it's just going to continue. But again, what really matters is what the U.S. is telling Russia in their negotiations. So Russia's not rejecting it outright. They say they want the details. They want to hear what the Americans are saying. I really hope that there's a ceasefire, that the killing stops. And maybe, these could be negotiations. Russia might offer something back. They might not accept, even if they reject this proposal, it doesn't mean that the negotiations are going to be dead right away, hopefully. But just this combined, Zelensky and what Rubio are saying are just pretty concerning, I would say. All right, so the next one here, Russian commander says Ukrainian forces are surrounded in Kursk. So Valery Gerasimov, the highest-ranking Russian military officer, said on Wednesday that Ukrainian troops in Russia's Kursk Oblast have been encircled and are now isolated amid reports that Ukrainian forces have begun to evacuate the Russian region. Ukraine launched a Western-backed invasion of Kursk last August, but after taking some territory, Russian troops began gradually pushing back the Ukrainians. In recent days, Russia has made a major push and is now rapidly gaining territory in Kursk. Gerasimov said that in the past 5 days, Russia had taken control of 24 settlements and 259 square kilometers of territory in Kursk. He also claimed that the Ukrainian military had suffered 67,000 casualties in the Russian oblast. So that would include dead and wounded. So you see this map here from South Front. According to Reuters, both Ukrainian and Russian military bloggers are reporting that Ukrainian forces are withdrawing from the region. This one Ukrainian Telegram account that said that by Friday, there will be no Ukrainian soldiers in Kursk. Yaroslav Trofimov, a reporter for the Wall Street Journal, wrote on X on Wednesday that after 7 months of combat in Kursk, the Ukrainian forces are withdrawing from the Russian region. Russia's gains in Kursk come amid a push from the U.S. to get Russia to agree to this 30-day ceasefire, as we just discussed. And Ukrainian officials had previously said that the purpose of the Kursk invasion was to gain leverage for negotiations. I think Zelensky recently suggested the idea of swapping territory in Kursk for Ukrainian territory. But obviously that's not going to happen now. And there was a report from Politico that I covered back in the fall in September 2025, about a month and a half into the invasion of Kursk. And that report said that Zelensky went ahead with this invasion of Kursk despite opposition from high-level military officers. And one officer objected that, saying that the invading brigade would be too exposed inside Russia and would suffer heavy casualties. Basically, they were saying, we could, grab some territory, but then we're going to be exposed. We're not going to really be able to defend this territory, and that turns out to be what happened here. All right, so the next one here, killing of Alawite civilians in Syria continues. So this one is from Jason Ditz. Syria's Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, declared their military operation against the Alawites over on Monday morning, but the execution of Alawite civilians has not halted. The number of civilians executed before Monday has also been rising further as more are counted. So at least 17 Alawite civilians have been killed along the northwestern coast since Monday, with the largest confirmed incident reported Monday night in Jabla. A witness says militia members aligned with the government entered the Alawite neighborhood, took 10 men from their homes, and shot them in the streets. The witness said some of the militia members appeared to be Chechen, which is in keeping with reports that HTS has absorbed a lot of foreign Sunni Islamists into the security force and their associated militias. They have been reported by locals as heavily involved in the massacres of Alawites from the beginning. At least 5 more civilians, possibly as many as 21, were executed in a village just south of Baniyaz, and their bodies left on the highway outside of town. So this is getting just no attention. And, we saw executions like this, happening against Alawites before the big massacre that happened over the weekend. I believe Jason in early February had a story where it was about 12 Alawites were executed in this manner. It may or may not be directly related to the ongoing purges of Alawites, but it was also reported that former diplomat Noureddin al-Labad and his brother were killed by gunmen in the southern town of Al-Sanamain. This area is far outside the field of mass executions, but Labad was also an Alawite and loosely tied to the former Assad government, which is presumably why he was targeted. Yet Labad had defected from the Assad government way back in 2013 and had since been serving as a representative to the Political Council of Syrian rebels overseas. He had just returned to Syria from France 2 weeks prior to his death. So the death toll from Thursday to Monday, so this was when the big massacres happened, it's still being counted. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights put the present documented figure at 1,383 killed, and those are just civilians. And the Gray Zone spoke to aid agencies in the area who told them that the actual toll was much higher. They said over 4,000 civilians were killed, thousands more wounded, and around 200,000 people have been internally displaced by the violence. I mean, that's a lot. 200,000 displaced. And over 10,000 Alawites had reportedly fled into neighboring Lebanon as of Sunday. So it looks like, when we talk about this, the vast majority of those executed were Alawites, but some Christians were killed as well. And I'm not sure what the breakdown is there. But the killing seems to be continuing. All right, so the next one here, the U.S. encouraged Kurds to sign a deal with the Syrian government. So the U.S. encouraged the Kurdish-led SDF to sign a deal with the new Syrian government led by the al-Qaeda offshoot Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. This was reported by Reuters on Wednesday. The leader of the SDF and Syria's de facto leader, Ahmad al-Shara, formerly known as Abu Muhammad al-Julani, signed a deal for the SDF to be merged into the Syrian government and military on Monday. The U.S.-backed SDF controls northeast Syria, where about 2,000 U.S. troops are deployed. The Trump administration has drawn up plans to withdraw from Syria, but a Pentagon official told Reuters that there was no sign that a pullout was imminent. The signing of the deal came after a weekend of massacres of the Alawite civilians by HTS forces in northwest Syria. The Reuters report said that the killings nudged the SDF deal along. So it says that all these horrific massacres that were happening push forward this deal between the SDF and the HTS-led government. I guess maybe they're afraid that similar atrocities could take place against them if they didn't agree to a deal. If the Kurds are able to, they're technically will be absorbed into the Syrian military, but if they're able to stay armed and maintain some degree of autonomy, that can protect them. And really the fact, they're in a hard place, the Kurds, because they have HTS on one side, and then they're still fighting against the SNA, which is the Turkish proxy, the Turkish-backed force in the north. Turkey also, backed HTS, but they're more openly, the SNA is more openly a Turkish proxy. So a senior regional intelligence source said that the U.S. played a very crucial role in getting the deal signed. The details of how exactly the SDF will merge with the HTS-led government still need to be worked out, but the agreement states that the Kurds will be able to have constitutional rights. So, that's another thing. There's so many details left here. We'll see how it actually is implemented, this deal. And sources told Reuters that they expected the deal to ease Turkish pressure on the Syrian Kurds, although the SDF continues to battle with the Turkish-backed Syrian National Army in northern Syria. Erdogan, Turkey's president, welcomed this agreement in a statement on Tuesday. He said, quote, "The full implementation of the agreement reached yesterday in Syria will contribute to the country's security and stability. The beneficiaries of this will be all our Syrian brothers and sisters. We attach great importance to the territorial integrity of our neighbor Syria, the preservation of its unity structure, and the strengthening of its unity and stability," end quote. So, again, there's just a lot, we could get into about this, but the best case scenario is that the Kurds and this government are able to get along, and the ceasefire happens with Turkey and the SNA. and that the U.S. pulls out and gets all these bases out of there. And that does appear, based on this report, to be part of the U.S.'s thinking, is that they want to get the Kurds to sign this deal and calm the violence, and then before the U.S. withdraws. But hopefully this leads to a U.S. withdrawal. All right. But, again, with all the atrocities going on in the West, it's tough to imagine that they're going to really want to share power with Kurds and Alawites and Christians, but we'll see. All right, the next one here, MSF condemns Israeli siege of Gaza. This one is from Kyle Anzalone at the Libertarian Institute. After phase 1 of the hostage exchange and ceasefire agreement between Hamas and Israel expired, Tel Aviv refused to continue on to step 2 of the deal and demanded new negotiations to pressure Hamas to agree to Israel's new demands. Tel Aviv has stopped all aid and power from entering the Strip. So Doctors Without Borders said in a statement on Tuesday, quote, that it strongly condemns the Israeli-imposed siege on Gaza, which is depriving people of basic services and critical supplies, including access to water, by cutting electricity supply. Israeli authorities have instrumentalized humanitarian needs by using them as a bargaining chip, such as cutting the electricity supply to Gaza and preventing all aid from entering. This policy, which amounts to collective punishment, must immediately be stopped. MSF calls on Israeli authorities to respect international humanitarian law and uphold its responsibilities as an occupying power, and to end this inhumane blockade on Gaza, end quote. And so there's more, Kyle gets into the Israeli ceasefire violations, again, based on the deal and the fact that more than 100 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza as well. And things are just, there's negotiations are happening in Qatar. No sign that any real progress is being made. And based on all the Israeli media reports, Israel has a plan to kind of keep ramping it up. I think the next step they're saying is I know that the cutting the electricity really cut the water supply, because there's desalination plants that need the electricity to make drinking water. But I think there's other water supplies that Israel can cut. And then they could, after that, it could turn into heavy airstrikes on Gaza again. All right, so the next one here, Trump says that Chuck Schumer is a Palestinian and not Jewish anymore. So President Trump on Wednesday called Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer a Palestinian while criticizing the Democrats for not supporting the GOP spending plan. Trump began, I'll read the quote first. He said, quote, Schumer is a Palestinian as far as I'm concerned. He's become a Palestinian. He used to be Jewish. He's not Jewish anymore, end quote. So he said this alongside the Irish prime minister who was visiting. And, you just imagine someone using Jewish or Israeli as an insult the way Trump does. It would be treated, the way that would be treated. And so Trump began using Palestinian as an insult while on the campaign trail, and even called President Biden a bad Palestinian during their debate. Trump first labeled Schumer a Palestinian while campaigning, apparently criticizing the Jewish senator for calling for elections in Israel. If you remember that last year, Schumer made kind of a big show to come out and say Netanyahu's an impediment to peace and calling for elections, and which kind of aligns with a lot of the kind of liberal Israeli side. But while Schumer criticized Netanyahu last year, I don't need to tell you that he is a staunch supporter of Israel and wants the U.S. to give Israel everything that it wants. And Trump also recently referred to Schumer as a Palestinian when discussing his plans for the U.S. to take over the Gaza Strip. Trump wrote on Truth Social on February 6th, quote, the Gaza Strip would be turned over to the United States by Israel at the conclusion of fighting. The Palestinians, people like Chuck Schumer, would have already been resettled in far safer and more beautiful communities with new and modern homes in the region, end quote. So another thing Trump said while he was with the Irish PM A reporter asked, "Are you going to discuss?" I forget exactly how it was worded, but it was directed toward the Irish Prime Minister, saying, "Are you going to discuss Trump's plan to expel Palestinians from Gaza?" And Trump said, "Hey, nobody's going to be expelling Palestinians," acting like it was a ridiculous way to phrase what he's been saying. So this has been taken. There's a lot of stories focusing on this, saying that this is Trump walking back on his plans. I didn't really read it like that because it was kind of off. It was, it's all he said. He basically said, "Hey, nobody's going to nobody's expelling the Palestinians." Basically, that was a stupid question. Next question. He didn't elaborate. And the way I kind of read it was him saying, "Hey, nobody's expelling the Palestinians. We're going to give them beautiful homes, somewhere else, and they're going to love it and they're going to want to go," because that has been his rhetoric about this. So we'll see. I don't know. I just didn't really see it as him really changing. But you never know with Trump either. It's tough to read him. But I would wait until he lays it out more and says, "Oh, no, the Palestinians don't have to leave." All right, so the next one here, the U.S. gave Israel a free hand to attack Lebanon. This is another one from Jason. So virtually from the moment the Israel-Lebanon ceasefire deal was signed in November, there have been reports that the U.S. assured Israel they could both sign the ceasefire and be totally free to keep carrying out attacks on Hezbollah. And I wrote a story on that at the time, back in November, that the U.S. gave them some kind of letter of assurances. But now sources are reporting that not only did that happen, but the U.S. and Israel actually signed a secret agreement with respect to the ceasefire the U.S. was supposed to enforce. Lebanon was made aware of the secret deal, though they never signed or approved of it. The revelation now provides context to the in excess of 1,000 ceasefire violations Israel has committed since November 27th, and why the U.S. did absolutely nothing about it. I mean, again, we basically knew this, but this is more confirmation, and it's actually saying it was a secret deal, not just the U.S. kind of giving Israel some kind of assurances. And Israel has continued near daily attacks on southern Lebanon and spent months after the ceasefire was agreed burning homes in southern villages, and they are still occupying southern Lebanon in 5 military outposts. They withdrew from the populated areas, but in some of those areas they're still, firing, shooting into and bombing. And it was unlikely that Israel would have agreed to a ceasefire if it came with the presumption that they could actually have to cease firing. Israel has presented each attack that they carried out as an imminent threat posed by Hezbollah, even though Hezbollah has not carried out a single attack on Israel since the ceasefire was agreed upon. Lebanese MPs have been complaining about the secret agreement in recent days. The U.S. National Security Council claimed the existence of the agreement was not true, but refused to answer any follow-up questions about why Israel keeps carrying out attacks without a U.S. reaction. And this is, the U.S. tries to act like it's some neutral mediator here, but when it's clearly not. So this is, again, just more confirmation of the arrangement of this so-called ceasefire deal. All right, so the next one here, Iran receives Trump letter and rejects talks. So a letter from President Trump was delivered to Iran by the UAE on Wednesday, an offer for negotiations that Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said was a deception meant to create the impression that the U.S. was the reasonable party and that Tehran refuses to negotiate. Khamenei and other Iranian officials have repeatedly rejected the idea of talks with the Trump administration in the face of increasing U.S. sanctions and threats of potential military action. Last week, when Trump discussed the letter in an interview, he warned, quote, "There are two ways Iran can be handled, militarily or you make a deal," end quote. Khamenei said that one reason Iran was unable to negotiate with President Trump was the fact that during his first administration, he withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal known as the JCPOA. So I've kind of been talking about this a lot lately. I don't want to be too redundant. This is just another rejection from Khamenei after Iran received this letter from Trump. So they actually did get it on, I think it was Friday when he first mentioned it. But basically, Khamenei and Iran's president, as I mentioned yesterday, Pezeshkian, they are saying no negotiations in response to the so-called maximum pressure campaign. Trump claims he wants some kind of deal. Well, if he really wants one, it looks like he's going to have to stop increasing the sanctions, maybe lift some that he's put in place, and try to engage with the Iranians that way if he really wants a deal. If not, I just see this continuing. It looks like Russia's trying to broker some stuff. Iran's going to hold talks with Russia and China about its nuclear program soon. So maybe Russia will try to make a push, while it's talking to the U.S. Maybe there's some stuff going on behind the scenes, but right now it just doesn't seem likely like there's going to be any kind of diplomatic progress. All right, so the next one here, the EU retaliates against Trump's trade moves. So this one's from, this tariff stuff is kind of just developing and changing. It's just so quickly. So I haven't really been writing about it because I feel like everything I write is then like outdated right away. So this article is from AP. Canada and the EU swiftly retaliate against Trump's steel and aluminum tariffs. So it looks like a trade war has started with the EU, with Canada. Major trade partners swiftly hit back at President Donald Trump's increased tariffs on aluminum and steel imports, imposing stiff new taxes on U.S. products from textiles and water heaters to beef and bourbon. Canada, the largest steel supplier to the U.S., said Wednesday it will place 25% reciprocal tariffs on steel products and also raise taxes on a host of items: tools, computers and servers, display monitors, sports equipment, and cast iron products. Across the Atlantic, the European Union will raise tariffs on American beef, poultry, bourbon, and motorcycles, and peanut butter and jeans. So combined, the new tariffs will cost companies billions of dollars and further escalate the uncertainty in two of the world's major trade partnerships. Companies will either take the losses and earn fewer profits, or more likely pass costs along to consumers in the form of higher prices. Prices will go up in Europe and the United States, and jobs are at stake, said European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. She said that they deeply regret what they have to do and all that. So it looks like the trade war is really on here, and this is something that's going to cause prices to rise. All right, so the next one here, Daniel Davis smeared and dropped from DNI job. So this article is from Kelly Vlahos at Responsible Statecraft. So there was a wonderful story in Jewish Insider on Wednesday that came out that Lieutenant Colonel Danny Davis was picked to be the Deputy Director of National Intelligence, to be Tulsi Gabbard's deputy. And if you don't know Danny Davis, if you listen to the Scott Horton show, I'm sure you know him. Scott's been interviewing him for years. He also has his own show now on YouTube, and I think it's called Deep Dive. It's really a great show. He was in the military. He was a whistleblower in 2009, all the way back in 2009. He said what the American people, what Congress was being told about Afghanistan was a lie, that it was going to be a failure, that there was no way the U.S. is going to achieve what it said it was going to achieve. And of course, he was right about that. So a very heroic thing to do. And again, he's just been really great this past couple years now on the war in Ukraine and the situation in the Middle East with Israel and Gaza and Iran and all the tensions. And because of that, a lot of people were upset. So there was a hit piece against him published by Jewish Insider. The headline was "Anti-Israel Commentator Tapped as Deputy Director of National Intelligence." And just to describe Daniel Davis as an anti-Israel commentator is just kind of absurd considering his career, his military career. And, I wouldn't call him anti-Israel. He's anti the U.S. supporting Israel, genociding Palestinians. And he does not believe that is in the interest of the United States to do. He's against war with Iran, and for that, they don't like him. But this article is actually just a great collection of quotes from Daniel Davis. Let's see. This is on January 12th. Davis wrote on X, quote, "On a practical level, we give away enormous leverage and credibility globally to hold anyone accountable for acts of wanton violence because we not merely turn a blind eye to it, we cheer it on and supply the means to do more. On a moral level, this is a stain on our character as a nation, as a culture that will not soon go away." And he's talking about supporting Israel in Gaza. Davis has suggested that Israel is pursuing ethnic cleansing of Gaza and compared Gaza to a prison. I mean, it's just like they make it sound like it's so absurd what he's saying. Let's see here. He's argued that the conflict did not begin on October 7th, 2023. That is so crazy. And again, it's just an article like how it just shows how good he is. And, I saw this and I thought it was too good to be true, but apparently he was really in the running for this position, but now they've withdrawn it. The reaction, the ADL came out with all these statements against him, calling him anti-Semitic, just completely ridiculous. And Kelly gets into some people who celebrated here, including Laura Loomer, Mark Levine, the radio host. He helped spread the insider story, and he was retweeting, quote tweeting things that Davis has put out. Again, great things that, from our perspective. So again, and Kelly defends him here. And again, he's really great. If he was in the administration, it would have been awesome. But, the Israel lobby wins again here. But go check Danny Davis out if you don't know him. It's a good reason to check out his show, see what he has to say. So that is it for the news for today. Please go check out our Viewpoints, one from Ted Galen Carpenter, Moral Bankruptcy, Justifying the Ukraine War as Good for the U.S. Economy, one from Ali Risk, The Ugly Reality on the Ground in Syria, one from Jamalia Osman, Trump Perpetuates Undeclared War in Somalia with Renewed Airstrikes, one from Eves Engler, Canada's Navy Sails with U.S. Ships as Trump Talks Annexation, and he's talking about Canada sailing ships through the Taiwan Strait. And this is kind of a new thing for Canada to do as frequently as they've been doing it. I really need to start covering China stuff more. I've been really neglecting that and kind of slacking. Our spotlight from Laura Lum, when anti-war protesters are called national security threats. And we're going to get much more into the Mahmoud Khalil case. He is still in the detention facility in Louisiana. I'll probably have more on that situation tomorrow. In Frontline, we have a story. Yale suspended a scholar after an AI-powered news site accused her of terrorist links. So these colleges are taking all these threats from the Trump administration seriously, and it's having a chilling effect. I think that's a big purpose of this. A big reason why they're being so heavy-handed with the first person they're trying to deport is that they're trying to scare these colleges into complying with whatever it is exactly that they want them to do. So anyway, that is it. Help us out with our fundraiser if you can. Subscribe, like, comment. All that stuff helps out as well. Follow us on social media. I will be back tomorrow with some more news. Thanks for listening.